Hi, this is my video review for Dungeon Crawl Classics, the role-playing game. Dungeon Crawl Classics, at first, it may seem like a typical retro clone. Well, first let's talk about the physical qualities of the book. This is a very sturdy book. I'm not kidding. I know I've said that of other books, but this book I dropped it accidentally from a considerable height, and it wasn't damaged at all. It didn't break. The pages are still in place. Everything is fine. So I am amazed by the quality of this product, and the ink is great. The paper is great quality, and just look at the art. Full color art in the front and back pages, and it's just such awesome art, very evocative of the 70s and the 80s. It's I know the proportion is so bad that some limbs are bigger than they should be in a normal human being, and the composition is sometimes terrible, all cluttered and very baroque, but that's what makes it so special. It reminds us of that time where fantasy role playing was born. The entire book is just I don't know, sprinkled with these awesome illustrations. Just look at them. Even in black and white, they are so evocative, so charged with fun and RPG life. I don't know how to describe them. That they're just so amazing. Anybody who's played role-playing games since he was little can tell you that this book just feels brimming with that amazing quality of awesomeness, and where you just want to grab a sword and kill a big bad dragon and fight orcs and goblins and all that and other weird things. Well, the game itself seems pretty basic at first glance. You have your typical character classes of cleric, fighter, wizard, and you have races as character classes as well, elf, dwarf, halfling. But these classes have been reworked in such a great way in this game that they feel completely fresh, completely new. For example, the cleric and the wizard feel like they have infinite spells. That's always been something of a drawback when you want to choose your first level character, and you don't want to play the cleric or the wizard because you think, oh no, I'm going to run out of spells and then I'm dead. But the cleric and the wizard in this game can keep pushing their luck, keep casting or launching their spells with a risk that they may suffer some kind of punishment. In the case of clerics, their deity may disapprove of their constant use of divine powers, and they may put a quest or curse upon them. And in the case of the wizard, he may tap into some type of chaotic energy, and his body will start to corrupt or mutate. It reminds me a bit of magic as handled in the Warhammer universe. The thief in this game, according to his alignment, can be either an assassin or maybe an infiltrator or a specialist in disarming traps. The alignments in this game are law, neutral, and chaos. So there is no system of good and evil. Everything is pretty tied to chaos or order, and that's a pretty cool thing too for the cleric. The cleric doesn't need to be restrained to a certain type of deity or to use certain types of weapons. You can even be a cleric of Cthulhu in this game if you want, and that doesn't make you exactly a bad guy, just an adventurer. So there are limitless possibilities. You don't feel restrained by alignment. You can act like Conan the Barbarian, who some people consider an anti-hero, but he's an adventurer that can try so many things, kill whoever he wants to kill if he feels that they have wronged him. It's that type of wild, savage adventure where the whole point is surviving and attaining glory. And that's great for a game. Maybe not very applicable in real life, in modern life, but in this game you feel so much freedom of interpreting these characters that are not restrained by some type of artificial morality. And the warrior, I really like the warrior in this game because you can see here a cool illustration. Because the first types of warriors I saw when I first started playing were these guys that were pretty skilled with a sword, but there really wasn't much to it. They didn't have to choose spells like the wizard, or know when to cast them exactly, or be crafty like the rogue. But they just hit the enemies with a sword or a mace, and that's it. And maybe I use a little bit of tactics. But in this game, warriors have mighty deeds. And the mighty deeds allow a warrior to get creative in his attack, and this is very realistic. Anyone who knows a bit of martial arts or maybe medieval combat knows that fighting requires a very creative mind. And you can use this creative thinking in this game as a warrior. For example, you may attack the eyes of the enemy, you may try to tackle the enemy, you may try to jump over some place to get a higher altitude and strike the enemy's head with a lot more ease. Or maybe you want to use your weapons in a creative way. For example, you may use your shield to try to paralyze or put down the enemy's shield, so you can strike with your weapon next with a lot more advantage. So you can get a very creative and very imaginative with a warrior. And concerning the balance between the classes, there may be some classes that I feel a little bit unbalanced. For example, the elf seem like a wizard with an advantage because it's a wizard that can use weapons as well and armor, and it's a lot more useful in combat. But this is what the game is all about randomness and different things that happen. For example, at the beginning of the game, you have to create a group of 0 level characters. That is, characters that are very weak. They have almost no chance of surviving. But that's what creates them, or forges the legend of your character, because if the character survives that first little adventure called a funnel, that seems like a gauntlet where the characters are running around in a dangerous maze, attacked by all sides and suffering so many traps. If that character survives that adventure, he can then become a warrior or a cleric or maybe a thief. Yeah, and that's another cool aspect of this game. Each player is encouraged to create 3 or 4 characters at the same time, because that ensures that the player won't be out of the game in case someone dies. Because in the old versions of the dungeon crawl type games, you had one character, and if he died, you were out of the game and you needed to roll a new character, and that took some time, or maybe you had to stop the session and play some other time. But in this game, when you have 3 or 4 characters, if one dies, you keep going with the other 3, hoping that they get out of the dungeon or whatever alive, and turn into full-fledged adventurers. The skills are also handled very well in this game. They are very simple. Just roll a single die and check to see if you pass a certain difficulty test. And the skills are related with what your character was before becoming an adventurer, and his current character class sometimes. For example, if you were a baker before, and if you are a fighter, it's most likely that you are skilled in baking different types of pastries and cakes, etc. But you are also knowledgeable in the use of and maintaining weapons. And this game, I cannot say it enough, this game is really, really random. There is a lot of randomness. From the start of character creation, you have to roll to see what your profession is, if you under which kind of birth augur or star you were born, kind of like a zodiac sign. And according to that, you may get a bonus in certain situations. Because the typical characteristics of this game of strength and dexterity have been a little modified, adding a characteristic known as personality, that's like a combination of wisdom and charisma. And there's also the luck score, and luck can be burned or used to save yourself in certain situations or to give you a little extra push in some checks and rolls. The equipment, the game gives you a decent list of equipment, but but I would have liked it to be a bit more, a bit larger, a bit more weapons in selection, armor, a bit more variety. Mm, the combat is pretty simple, but it has its subtle modifications. There are critical hits and fumbles that you have to roll in a table when you get a critical hit or a fumble to see how good or how bad was the hit or the fumble. And that depends also on your class. For example, the warriors will always get a greater critical hit effect and maybe a not so bad fumble, but the other classes won't do that because they have other abilities. They are better at some other things. What also a great thing about this game, you don't really have to get to level 20 to feel really powerful. Your character is always at risk, but the maximum standard level is level 10, and this is great because sometimes some people don't want to play a very long campaign. They just want to play a few levels, and that way you can carry out a campaign that reaches level 6 or 7 and the player still feels like his character attained a significant level of power or prowess. But still, because of the lethality and the death probabilities of this game, very few characters will actually go past maybe level 4 or 5. And the game also has a great selection of spells. All the spells are random. There is no magic missile spell here that does four-sided die of damage and that's it, plus a few bonuses and a few more magic missiles. But in this game you have random tables for each spell, and sometimes if you cast a spell by burning luck or maybe doing a small sacrifice, you may make that spell even more powerful, the effect more spectacular and effective than it would normally be. But some other times it results in a very bad result that may cause some kind of degeneration or deform your character because of the corruption I mentioned last time, that there was some type of chaotic energy. The spell duels are also handled pretty well in this game. Maybe not as fast, but with a lot more logic than in some other games. It makes a lot more sense. And there are patrons in this game that are sort of like deities, demigods, and spiritual beings that may form societies or partnerships or maybe pacts with your characters, and this may result in different spells, powers, and benefits for your character. But if your character fails in that partnership or pact or whatever, your character may be affected in something worse than death. Okay, there's also a great selection of monsters in this game and some guidelines on how to create your own, and I simply love that when a book gives you a substantial or decent selection of monsters to use right away and tells you how to generate your own monsters. That's just great, because that shows they really care about their customers and they are not interested in stealing your money by selling you hundreds and hundreds of bestiaries and monster tomes, etc., etc. It also gives a good selection of PCs. This game has a very decent selection. If you need a peasant, a sage, a witch, maybe a bandit, you can go to the back of the book and select a few NPCs and you're ready to play with your players. There are also a lot of nice bonuses, suggested readings, titles you can give to your characters to represent their prestige or advance in power. There are also different types of poisons and curses you can use in your adventures, and it even includes 2 adventures ready to play. Well, the first adventure feels a bit more fleshed out, and it's a type of funnel adventure where you send your 0 level characters to a strange place, a strange ruin, and you hope that they get out of there alive because the entire place is filled with dangers that can kill them right away. The other adventure is not that it's bad. It's just that it feels more like an encounter or a section of an adventure, right, rather than a full dungeon or a full wilderness adventure. It feels more like a section or an encounter inside an adventure. It's a bit short. All in all, this game is great. I want to get out of the way that this is not a game for beginners. This game considers that you already have some knowledge of what a role-playing game is, of what Dungeons and Dragons was, and it will not hold your hand or give you great beginner tips on how to play it. It's designed for more advanced players, in my opinion. But a beginner with just looking at some forums and reading carefully, he can pretty much understand how the game works. This game was also a bit controversial because it uses the weird dice, or Sochi dice as they call them. And instead of the 7 polyhedral dice we're all accustomed to, it uses also a 14-sided die, a 16-sided die, a 30-sided die, which can be reproduced with normal dice as well, but it's a bit of a hassle, or it slows play down a bit. It's not that bad. I played this game with just the 7 classical polyhedral dice, but it's better if you have the Sochi dice, in my opinion. It's a bit more comfortable. Well, I cannot recommend this game enough. This is a great game. This is a complete game, not one of those traps where you buy one book and you need to buy the other 4 or 5 books so that the game feels complete. This is a complete game that will last you a lifetime if you know how to use it correctly. Well, thanks for watching my review. If you have any comments, please write them down, and see you later.